Hey, welcome back. In the last video, I talked about how getting stuck in a productivity trap means that you oftentimes will overlook learning. You're just so focused on the thing right in front of you, you never take time to learn. Now, in this video, I want to dive into how to learn anything. I want to begin by telling you a short story. As you all know, in addition to being a university professor, I also run a research lab. The lab generates a lot of data, and so one day I said to the lab, we need to be able to analyze our own data. And nobody listened. Now, don't get me wrong, we have great collaborators, core facilities that will help us. But we got to the point where the onus was on us, that we were doing this often enough that we needed to be able to analyze our own data. So I said again to the lab, we need to analyze our own data. And again, nobody listened. So I said, fine, I'll just do it myself. So where do I begin? How does a chemist turned biologist learn computer programming and coding? Where to begin? Well, these few principles that I discovered, I think are broadly applicable and can help anyone trying to learn anything. Before we even begin, we need to talk about motivation. Motivation is one of these things that I think is important to take a step back and to think about before you dive into a learning project. Why do you want to learn something new? Is it intrinsic because you have some deep desire to learn? A bit like I was saying, we need to be able to analyze our own data because the responsibility was on us. Or is it extrinsic? Perhaps a boss is saying you need to learn this for something important for your job. I also had a little bit of extrinsic motivation. I saw this young crop of scientists coming through with these skills that were able to take data, analyze it, and bring it back to the bench to carry out experiments. And I thought, this is the future. So I think we need to identify our motivations for any project, because an intrinsically motivated project will often be easier than extrinsic motivation. But extrinsic motivation oftentimes gets a bad rap. But oftentimes you start something not knowing how much you're eventually going to enjoy it. Anyhow, we take a step back. Motivation is something I think that we want to think about at the beginning, recognize what our motivation is, and that will help us dive right in. So why? Why do you want to learn this next thing? So after you've answered that question, the next step is to plan. Now, I'm all for diving right in and figuring out, just start rolling around in some new ideas and new concepts. But eventually, if you don't want to just run in place, you're going to need a plan. Now, I'm all for just starting, exploring, and trying to figure out this new thing you want to learn. But I think there's two key factors you want to anticipate and make a plan for. The first is when. When are you going to take on this new learning project? For me, I did my early coding between the hours of 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. because I have a young family. You need to figure out when you're going to carve out time to do this. You know, one of my newest favorite sayings is, I'm too busy is a thinly veiled way of saying it's not important. And that's absolutely true. Things that are important, you'll make time for. If this learning project is important to you, then you will make time for it. But you want to identify when that time is. Is it during work, before work, after work, early in the morning, late at night, weekends only? Whatever works for you, you need to then commit and establish this time that you will be able to do this. The second is how. How are you going to take on this learning project? You need to understand the resources that are available to you. Now, fortunately, there are more resources available than ever before. The de facto standard was previously sitting in a classroom, having a teacher, and learning something. But we have more resources at our fingertips than ever before. YouTube videos, tutorials, blog posts, articles, podcasts, cohort-based courses, instructors, teachers, mentors, coaches, and on and on and on. What you need to do is identify the approach that you are going to take in order to learn the thing that you want to. So you need a plan for when and a plan for how, and start to execute that plan. Step 2, immersion. You need to dive in and go deep. One of the things that helped me very early on was when I was learning some of these terms and concepts and ideas around data science and computer programming. I found a podcast that the style was an interview between the interviewer and a data science expert. And the conversation was around practicing data science and what it looked like today. Now, early on, I didn't understand many of the terms, what they were talking about, what machine learning or AI algorithms they were trying to develop. This was really challenging at the beginning, but I would look up these terms and go and listen to the next episode in the podcast, and I would understand a little bit more and a little bit more. Learning doesn't have to take place in these traditional exposure to textbooks and so on. What you want to do is complement your learning with these immersive and deep resources that are now available at your fingertips. If we take this language example again, maybe you can find a radio station in the country of origin that's streaming on the internet. Maybe you could find some cooking or recipes that are going to introduce you to new vocabulary. See, you can think about resources beyond the traditional ones that complement the things that you're trying to learn. Step 3, real-world applications. As early as you can, you want to be applying your learning to real-world applications. For me, I was able to take data sets that I was interested in studying and use those for my learning. Yes, educational and toy and pedagogical examples are beneficial, but even more beneficial is the motivation you will get by working with data that eventually you will be able to answer questions of. The real world application, to be able to apply your new learning to the thing that you eventually want to do, is going to be crucial. In the education field, one of the biggest challenges is a concept called transfer. How do we take the principles that we teach you in a classroom and transfer it to real world knowledge? This concept of transfer is the holy grail in education right now. So what you want to do is figure out how you can transfer your knowledge to real world projects. And one of the simplest ways is get started on those real world projects right from the first day. Step 4, update. You have a plan, you dove in deep, you're doing real world applications, but what you need to realize is this plan is dynamic, it's malleable. You need to update this plan when you have more information. When you start a learning project, you are not going to know all of the resources or all of the things that are even available for you to learn. So you need to take a step back from time to time and go through this process again and say, what are the things that I want to learn? You might have thought something was important right from the first day, only to realize that's actually not that important. I should be doing this other thing. So this updating, this take a step back and reassess the plan and where you're going is going to be really important. You might need to update when you're doing your learning, or you might need to update how you're doing your learning. In either case, we need to consider learning a loop, which reminds me of this OODA loop. This was pioneered by John Boyd, a naval fighter pilot in the Korean War, who was teaching fighter pilots in dogfights to make rapid fire decisions under high pressure, intense situations. So what is this OODA loop? The first O is observe. You need to observe your surroundings. The second is orient. Orient yourself to what's happening. The third is make a decision about what you're going to do. And the fourth is act. Carry that out. And importantly, this OODA loop is a loop because after you act, you go back to the first, you're going to observe, and you're going to look around again and go through this again and again and again. This constant updating, he claims, is going to help your decision making. Well, just like this OODA loop, you need to update your plan. You need to look around, observe, orient, and then to make a decision, act and say, this is what I'm going to learn. And then after that, come back, update the plan, and decide again if this is going to be the best course of action. Education is not a linear process. There's no point at which you're done. You say, okay, I've learned enough. The learning environment is dynamic, and so should your decision-making about your own learning journey. So, how is my computational learning journey going? Well, it's going okay, but you know what? I still have a lot to learn. If you like this video on learning, go ahead and check out this other video I made. There's a great book called Ultra Learning, which dives deeper into some of these fundamentals. I made a little review about it, so go ahead and check it out.